to week 15 of Sunday Night Foodball. We've got the Washington Commanders against the New York Giants. For Washington, we're going to do some crab legs. Blue crab, that soft shell would be the traditional way to do things in Maryland. Can't get that here, so we're going to do the next best thing, which is Dungeness crab. I'm really excited for that. And for New York, there's lots of food options there. It's a very vibrant food city. But one of my favorites that I always like to do is pastrami, big staple of any sort of New York delicatessen. So we're going to be doing that. So hope you enjoy the video. Looking forward to getting to cooking. So to start our pastrami, we need to have a couple of pieces of corned beef. So I've got here are 2 corned beef brisket flats. So that's the same cut of meat that you would normally use for those nice slices of sliced brisket. But instead of just being prepared normally, just frozen and then cooked whenever you're ready with it, they have been cured in a curing mixture that involves a heavy dose of pepper. A lot of times there's coriander, a bunch of salt, some other seasonings. It's a way of preserving the meat, and it changes the flavor also. So we got these brisket flats here that have been corned. Now what we're going to do is the night before I'm going to smoke them and turn them into pastrami. I'm going to put them in Ziploc bags and then fill the rest of the bag with cold water. That's just going to pull some of that extra seasoning out of there. I want my own seasoning on here. I want to be able to get my own flavors added. So I'm not wanting it to be overly saturated with all of that fully used pepper and everything. And the packages a lot of times will come with the seasoning mix. Don't need that. I'm going to do my own seasoning and I'll show you how that works. I'll do that tomorrow during the day. But the night before, I'm going to get these in the bags, and then I'm just going to fill the rest of the bags up with cold water. Make sure that I'm covering the entire slab of meat. And then I'm going to let that kind of pull some of that extra seasoning out of there so that the meat has a chance to show its own flavor. Got the corned beef into the bags filled with water now. It's about 10 p.m. Saturday night now. I'm going to start cooking this shortly after noon tomorrow. So I'm going to do first thing in the morning whenever I wake up. I'm going to drain all the water out of these bags and refill them, because by that point that water is going to have a lot of all that pinkish, all that brine mixed in with it. And so I'm going to want a cleaner batch to finish it off so I can pull as much of that out as possible. If you change the water once or twice, that helps a lot. And then whatever seasonings you add to it, you'll be able to taste those seasonings nice and crispy on the outside, but the inside will just have that good pure corned beef flavor. So that's going to be the plan. So the corned beef has been sitting in the fridge in that water overnight. I changed the water this morning so it would have a chance to kind of clean out even more. And now it's got this appearance here. This is not the most appetizing looking meat in the world, I will admit. It's kind of gray and in between gray and pink in a lot of places. There's still some spots where it's red, where the brine didn't get pulled out completely. But not the most appetizing looking thing in the world. But as it cooks, it's going to regain its color. So what we need to do now is get our seasoning on. So I've got my little homemade pastrami mix here. The main ingredient is black pepper, and if you can do coarse ground, that's even better, so you get like a texture on the outside. And then coriander, and salt, mustard powder, garlic powder, and paprika, all in smaller doses. The black pepper and the coriander are going to be the 2 main things. So we're going to get that all mixed together a little bit, and then get that coating the surfaces here. It's a pretty strong flavored rub, so I'm not going to try to get too much on there, but I want enough that it's going to create a crust and that it's going to get some of my flavors on there and not just the corned beef flavor. Corned beef is good, but we're going for pastrami here. So once we get all that pastrami rub on there, so we can give it its flavor, it's going to go on the smoker and it's going to cook a lot like a regular brisket. So I'm going to run it in the 250 to 275 range. I'm going to cook it up until it gets to about 165 internal, more or less, and it's got a good bark on the outside. And I'm going to get it wrapped and thrown back on there up until it's tender, which should happen right in the 195 to 200 region usually. Sometimes it's a few degrees higher. But it's going to cook just like a regular brisket for the most part there, because that's where the meat comes from. But that steaming process at the end, once it's wrapped, is really, really important. That's how you get nice, really juicy pastrami. It makes for great sandwiches, makes for a great just slice of meat to eat on its own. So we're going to have to pay attention to that. Our pastrami has been smoking for about 3.5 hours, staying at a temp between 250 and 275 and using some hickory wood to give it some smoke. It's got a good crust built now. I know you can't smell it through the camera, but it's got a very strong peppery scent coming through there. You can see that coarse grained pepper is giving it a nice crust along the outside. It's going to give it just a little bit of texture also. Once you get a little bit of shrinkage from it, where some of that fat's rendered down and some of the water's evaporated out of it, and it's got that nice crust forming, then it's time to let it steam to finish. So you're going to get it wrapped in butcher paper or foil and throw it either back on the smoker or into the oven to finish up until it's fork tender, which usually is going to be right around 200 degrees. And for the Washington side of things, we're going to be doing some crab legs on the smoker. Proper Maryland style doing this would be blue crabs. Those are really, really hard to find in Kansas. So what we got instead are some Dungeness crab legs. So it's going to be a very simple thing here. What I'm going to do is I've got some melted butter with some garlic and fresh parsley mixed in there. I put a little bit in reserve. We're going to keep that for dipping once we've got the actual legs. And I'm just going to drizzle a little bit over. It doesn't seem like it should make a big difference because we're going to eat the inside of the legs, obviously, not the shells. But that's going to permeate there. It's going to steam in the smoker. That flavor is going to show up. I've done this a couple times before and it makes way more of a difference than I ever would have actually expected. Try to get some, especially on the clusters. Some garlic on there. Leave the rest of that to go along with the reserve. Now, I've got smoker coming back up to temp. I'm going to be trying to run this right around 275 to 300 degrees, so just a little bit warmer. It's going to be a quick cook, 30 minutes, 45 at the most. If you've cooked crab legs before, you know it's not a whole lot of meat in there. It's going to cook quickly. You don't want to overdo it and let it toughen up. We just want to make sure that it's well enough done to be safe to eat. I'm going to be running that with some cherry wood, I think is what I'm going to do today. Any sort of sweeter, milder wood is going to go good with this. You don't want to overpower some pretty delicate seafood. You just want to accent it a little bit with some nice rich smoke. The crab legs are done. I don't run an internal temperature with these just because there's no real good way to probe a thermometer in there. But once they start to get kind of that darker color, blacken up in some of the lighter places like that, and when the shells are hot to the touch, I know they're going to be ready to go. So there's no resting time necessary with these since they come up pretty quickly to temperature. At this point, get your butter ready with whatever you want in it. Garlic, lemon, parsley, however you want to season it up. Grab your crab legs and get to cracking. It's time to slice the pastrami now. So it cooked in the smoker for about 3 hours, maybe 3.5, uncovered, until it got a good bark on it and it was coming up to the stall, 160, 165 degrees internal, more or less. Then I wrapped it and kept it cooking for about another 3 hours until it ended up at about 195, 198 internal. More importantly though, gets that jiggly consistency. That means that it's nice and tender all the way through. The fat's pretty well rendered down. Any connective tissues are pretty well cooked down. And then I let it rest for about another 45 minutes or an hour in butcher paper. Now, just time to go through and do some thin slices against the grain. Now it's going to look red on the inside. Normally that means that it's raw or rare. With pastrami, just the way the seasoning affects the meat, that actually means it's well done. If you remember, it started out gray before I got it cooked. Now it's got that red, vibrant corned beef color to it. And it's really, really tender, ready to pull apart. So I'm just going to keep slicing it against the grain. If you've got a deli slicer, you can go even thinner than the knife will. It'll be great for sandwiches, or you can load up on lots of layers, make it really tender. But with a good brisket knife, you can get down to about 1/4 of an inch or so on all the slices and still get really nice thin slices of pastrami. So if you use this for sandwiches, it's going to have a lot more flavor than most any other deli meat. That outside's going to be really peppery. The coriander's going to give it a little bit of a bite too. And on the inside, you'll get the brine from the corning process, the meat, and that seasoning that we add on at the end. That's all going to mix together. It's going to give it a lot of good, rich, vibrant flavor. Best type of deli meat for sandwiches. If you've got smoked cheese or anything like that to go with it, something to give even a little bit more flavor, great way to spice up any sort of leftovers, anything like that. Great for sandwiches, great for anything like that. One of my favorite things to smoke, and really not that hard to do either. So I'm really excited to get into this. Ready to eat it. Thanks again for joining this Week 15 edition of Sunday Night Foodball with the Washington Commanders and New York Giants. Again, for Washington, we did that Dungeness crab. It came out really good, a lot of flavor, great way to do it. And for the Giants, we did some pastrami, probably my favorite deli meat. Great way to just have leftovers that you enjoy for the entire week. Never get tired of that extra flavor. So, hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you again for watching. As always, thanks to my lovely wife Evelise for doing all the recording and editing and everything. And if you enjoyed this video, feel free to like, share, subscribe, anything you can do to help promote us. Thank you.